Start off with this guy, Mr. Andy Kindler. You've seen him on The Late Show with David Letterman on Everybody Loves Raymond. Each summer at the Just for Laughs Festival in Montreal, he delivers the State of the Industry address, but he is probably best known for his mockery of not only himself, but other comedians more deserving of his wrath. Andy and myself first met when we shared the stage at the Vancouver Comedy Fest. It's been 5 years since his last visit with us, so it's time to find out what's going on in Andy Kindler's mind during our April Fool's Day special. It seems that Andy would like to share some thoughts with on the various promulgators of new atheism, like Bill Maher and Ricky Gervais and the like. Joining Andy is a gentleman by the name of Greg Fitzsimmons. Of course, Greg is a stand-up comedian, television writer, producer, regular guest on The Howard Stern Show, Chelsea Lately, Adam Carolla Show, Joe Rogan Experience. Basically, he'll take any job he can get, any work he can get. In 2011, he came out with his book, Dear Mrs. Fitzsimmons, and apparently it received critical praise from NPR and Vanity Fair. I know there's a joke there somewhere. Since 2006, Greg has hosted a radio show on Howard Stern Sirius XM channel and his own twice-weekly podcast, Fitzdog Radio. He's a regular on Letterman, Conan, Kimmel. By the way, why is his bio longer than Andy Kindler's? Folks, joining us on the show today are both the gentlemen, Mr. Andy Kindler and Mr. Greg Fitzsimmons. Greg, let's just make sure you're alive and well. How are you, Greg?
Well, I'm feeling a little competitive with Andy right now. I mean, I know that my intro was longer, but that was, I think, just due to the fact that I wrote a longer intro.
And well done in third person, of course, as they're known to do. Mr. Kindler, I can hear you giggling away already there. Thank you for joining us again. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I mean, yeah, I could have a longer resume if half my credits were fake, too.
When was the last?
What percentage of the market?
You can't trace any of them.
When was the last time you two nut jobs spoke with each other, visited with each other, even?
Greg and I see each other probably more than I see my wife and his wife.
That's uncomfortable.
That didn't sound right.
No.
Here's something that is going to be hard to physically picture, but Andy and I were on the beach together about a week ago.
Ooh, wow. You know, guys, let me just say that two thongs still don't make it right, man.
Well, look, I'm all for wordplay, but I'll just say that we were two fish out of water. Looked like two Jews, an Irishman and a Jew at the beach. There's nothing could look more out of place. He blends in with the sand. And I'm like saying, it's chilly.
Right.
Yeah, it's chilly out here.
He just instinctively started to wander on the sand.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been the Wandering Jews. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andy, I was just sharing with our listeners, you and I first met, 6 years ago, I think, at Vancouver Comedy Fest, and we both kind of did a thing out there on a stage talking with a few other folks about religion, and I don't even remember what it was all about. I just remember that the residual effect was having an appreciation for you. So it's good to have you back on the show. It's been 5 years since you've been on our show. Have you learned anything in those 5 years, Mr. Kindler?
I've learned that aging it's not, they're not kidding around with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It seems to be speeding up. It doesn't seem to be reversing itself. But I absolutely do remember that event. It was really, really fun. We actually bonded, which is hard to do for humans,
and especially for males, it can get awkward sometimes.
For spiritual, what do you call us? Spiritual explorers?
Spiritual pawns? How about that?
Spiritual I say explorers.
Okay, all right. Let me get this right, Andy. You're about, I don't want to give things away here, but you're about 57. Is that about right?
Yeah, don't give it away. But I give it away. My wife says, why don't you choose one person not to tell your age to? Why don't you start there? I'll be in a restaurant. I'll have the fettuccine primavera. I'm 57. Did I mention that?
Can I get the special?
Yeah.
I had an epiphany recently that, as you get older, you become less ageist. Like, when I was younger, it was very easy for me to dislike old people or just marginalize them completely. And I realized something, like, you're better off being racist or homophobic, because as you get older, I'm not getting any gayer or blacker.
That is beautiful.
That's an epitaph right there. That was gold. Greg, you're roughly my age, I think. Are you not 47?
I'm 47 years old, correct.
All right. I wanted to get the age thing out of the way because I'm just wondering if, I mean, you guys seem to have kind of a similar bent on this God stuff and this religion stuff and this faith stuff. And, you know, you're 10 years different. You know, I wonder if that makes any difference in your points of view. You were both kind of, were you not raised in the same area?
I was raised in Queens, New York, and I was raised as a reform. Well, I'm definitely from a different generation than Greg, but
yeah.
I felt lucky in the fact that I was influenced by the 60s. So in the 60s, you know, I kind of got at an early age that you dropped acid, you did all these things like dancing, you wrote songs, you did music, and you got high from it, even before I did any experimenting with it. So it was natural to me to have spirituality, even though I rejected organized religion. But I think in Greg's generation, it's even more unusual because his generation hates the hippies in the 60s.
Yeah, exactly. Would you agree with that, Greg?
Well, actually, no. I grew up, I had long hair, and I wore tie-dyed shirts, and I listened to the Dead, and I would say, like, I don't listen to any music that wasn't made between 1965 and 1973. I was very much like, my friends were just a throwback to that time, but I think my biggest influence was more that I was raised so devoutly Irish Catholic, Bronx Irish Catholic, that I got to an age where I started to react against the religion in terms of, like, I think bumping up against some of the historical stuff that I felt like didn't jibe, but yet the foundation was there and my connection to God was there, and that's probably only grown stronger. Or it was always strong. I think I've maintained a strong relationship to the sense of God.
So with both of you, and maybe Greg will ask you this first, who has had the most spiritual impact on you your entire life? Would it be for example, your Guatemalan cleaning lady? I mean, who would it be?
I guess music, you know, like Van Morrison. You know, I feel like there's certain artists when I listen to, and he writes a lot about the mystic, and I think that I think as an Irishman, he has this sense of you know, a respect and a wonder and an awe of the unknown. Whereas I think with the atheists, there seems to be this entitlement that they can own the unknown and that they can access it, as opposed to stand on the edge of it and respect it. Yeah, we're learning things. It's exciting that science is peeling back more layers, but that in the end, they were getting no closer to, you know, whoever created it all and keeps it all going.
I was kind of hoping you'd pick up on the Guatemalan cleaning lady bit and segue.
He asked you to lead him into that. That's what I'm surprised about.
And segue into a Stephen Baldwin conversation, because that's who led him to the Lord Jesus Christ, you see. Anyway, now, as far as you're concerned, Andy, I mean, I know you kind of grew up, both parents were sort of agnostic-y, and yet your mom has become a born-again Quaker.
Well, yeah, I mean,
he wouldn't call it that.
No.
I mean, I grew up Jewish, so in a lot of cases that means you're an atheist or at least agnostic.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways, you know, it's a cliche to say that you rebel against what you knew, but my father was like, actually he's softened more now because he really has always been an agnostic, but it seemed like much more atheist to me at the time, you know, and he was very much against, like, you know, when I was 14 or 15, I was interested in everything, the occult, hypnotism, you know, everything, and he was like, at one point frightened, even though I was just dabbling in it, like I was collecting stamps, you know, he was nervous of what would happen. But my mom is actually a really amazing story that did change my life, because when I was 16 or 17, she just had, well, first of all, she did grow up as the only Jewish person, like in Mamaroneck, New York, and there is like a thing that, you know, Jewish people are anti-Semitic because you feel separate. And I used to have a joke like, they say, how can a Jew be anti-Semitic? I say, well, come to the temple where I went as a kid. Make your own decision, you know.
Right.
So she had a very strong connection with whatever she calls Jesus. She has tons of doubt about what happens, but she related to Jesus as an inspiration in a very personal way. And what they do is they meet every Sunday in the Flushing Quaker Meeting House, which is like the oldest meeting house I think in the country. And and it's called meaningful worship. You can say things, you can sit in silence. There's no dogma. You don't have to be Christian. You don't have to believe in God. And it's just a wonderful. And it's always great online when atheists tell me how terrible it is, and then They're stunned by the fact that anybody's religion isn't making them a terrible person who's going to be a terrorist.
Yeah. By the way, it sounds like one of you is doing the dishes.
Oh,
I'm pouring coffee. Sorry, I'm pouring coffee.
Trying to stay awake.
Wow.
Drinking a coffee.
I'm not
like
saying the interview is going badly, but Adderall, and this is my second cup of coffee.
Adderall. All right, here's the email that started this whole thing. Andy, do you mind? I didn't ask you.
No, please. No,
okay.
Go ahead.
So
don't talk about the sexual things.
No,
towards you.
Right, I'll leave the rash out of the conversation. So Andy said in this email to me, look, my main problem with the new atheists is like the GOP. They use arguments as pretext to make broad generalizations and engage in what I think is hate speech. I realized the Bible wasn't literal when I was a kid. All reasonable people should reject fundamentalism, but that doesn't mean that all religion is bad and dangerous. Assuming everybody bases their spirituality on a literal interpretation of the Bible. By the way, Greg, I hope you're paying attention because I want your response on this. Assuming everybody bases their spirituality on a literal interpretation of the Bible is a false premise. Sam Harris justifies his hate of Muslims by pointing to passages from the Quran as proof of evil. They are serving no useful purpose doing this. Osama bin Laden distorted religion to manipulate his followers. This is political, not religious. Commentary on that by Greg Fitzsimmons. Greg?
Well, I think that religion as politics is obviously where you get into trouble, and again, going back to the Irish thing, I don't always look at what happened between England and Ireland as a religious war. I think that's all spin. It was a war about real estate, and it was a war about colonialism. And I think that, to try to invoke religion when you're talking about killing other people is obviously a false premise right out of the gate. So, and I think I have probably a harder time with religion than Andy does. I mean, to me, it really is much more of it's less of a theism and probably more of like, I guess what you'd call more of an agnosticism agnosticism means you believe in a power as opposed to atheism, correct?
Well, agnosticism is, who knows, maybe yes, maybe no.
That's what they get.
No, that's not me. That's not me. There's so many different terms. I know I read one of those Hawkins books where he outlines exactly what you can label. I think it's a blurred line for me. I mean, I think that my Catholicism is very much a part of me, and I think that the story, the narrative of Jesus and even the Holy Spirit, that stuff is still stuff that is in my hard drive that works for me. But when you talk about once it's a collective and once it's a political. Once it's used as politics, then obviously it's not what the intention was.
Andy, any take on that?
No, I think it's true. If I didn't hate if these atheists weren't causing all Islam, all the world needs right now is more hate against Islam. I'm being sarcastic. It's like, even those cartoons where they point out, some of these people made these cartoons. A lot of those people making those cartoons were doing it I'm not saying every one of them, but some of them made purposefully or purposely to stir up people. So it's like if there wasn't all this kind of like making people hate minorities even more, I would be totally more focused on the ridiculous, Christian fundamentalism of the GOP and all this kind of stuff. But I kind of always think that stuff is not really about that anyway. Look at how immoral and unethical all of these right-wing Republicans are, and yet they always point to the Bible. They're not men of God.
Right.
They're using it just to. It's all about power. They want to control people, and I doubt Jimmy Swaggart believes in it. Maybe Billy Graham believed it. I don't know. I doubt that many of those people. I know Greg Fitzsimmons is a big Pat Robertson fan.
Oh yeah.
But look, what can you do?
No, that's a shocking.
To me, it's like he's just got a great delivery, and his Late Show Friday I'll put up against anybody.
And his name, 700. How can you go wrong?
Okay.
That's a high number.
Jeez. Andy Kindler and Greg Fitzsimmons running things here on the Drew Marshall Show. Here is the second part of Andy Kindler's email to Drew Marshall. Drew, the last time we were together, I found your skin supple and smooth. No,
This is true. True story.
God.
He said Dawkins, Harris, Bill Maher, etc. are all xenophobic. You don't hear them slam Jews. They hate all religion, but they all single out Islam as being the worst. They provide no historical context, like remembering there was an Inquisition. Not sure if you've seen a lot of angry atheist Twitter accounts. They put anti-Islam in their Twitter bio and viciously attack anyone who expresses anything even vaguely spiritual. When there is already so much anti-Muslim prejudice in the world, why inflame it? So again, that's kind of what you're talking about here. Who in your two brains, and maybe Greg will go with you on this one to start off, in the world of entertainment is sort of the most caustic anti-theist?
Well, you got Garofalo's up there. She takes a pretty firm stance on it, and I really like Janine because I think she's one of the few people that really talked about the invading Iraq at the time, and you look back and you go, oh my God, she was right about all of it, and she was completely attacked by everybody for her views. So, but when it comes to religion, and to me, it's like I really do draw a line between religion and spirituality. Like I think that for me, it's more of a search for understanding in our relationship to the universe, and my belief that there is an entity that is creating and controlling things. But I think with her, it's like people that attack religion, I think you can do that on certain grounds, depending on who's using the religion. I think you can attack that, but yeah. I think she goes even deeper, and I think what Andy was saying before is like any hint of you having spirituality, they have to go after, and that's just absurd to me. That's a lot of times, like for her, I think she was raised very Catholic, and so it's a reaction to that. And Andy and I had a discussion on stage. I did a live podcast in Austin, and it was Andy and I on one side, and sort of Ari Shaffir and Janine Garofalo on the other, and them being the atheists. And I realized later the reason why they were so passionately against any beliefs we had is that he was raised Orthodox Jew and she was raised hardcore Catholic, and that a lot of times this kind of this desire to convert people to atheism, it comes from their own rejection of where they came from.
Yeah, Andy, any take on that one?
Well, the thing about it too is that when you talk about religion, it's like any of these words can be used as a wedge issue. To me, it's like when you get into semantics of things, so it's like, of course I don't like most organized religions. I don't go to temple. It's like, I'm not like advocating, well, Jews don't usually proselytize anyway, yeah. But because we're better. But in terms of like, what I'm saying is, it's like when I watched that, this is a side note, but that Neil deGrasse Tyson, what's his name?
deGrasse Tyson?
Cosmos?
Yeah. I'm not saying he's a bad or whatever, but this whole thing about like where people are like, you got to watch Cosmos because this is the real deal. All right, you've tried the rest. It's like me saying, why aren't people watching more comedy? It's so important. And my thing is like, there's a whole other side to the universe that's art, that's music, that's dance, and they don't all. And of course, you get in trouble when you make these kind of arguments because you can't really make an exact argument this way. But like even people like Einstein, who said, he said he didn't come by some of what he came up with by his rational mind. All that means is it's the concept of no mind, which you have in martial arts and in many things. Like, no, it's not like you can just think of something and come up with something. But if you're prepared in a field and you have all the training and the expertise and the technique, which is true for music or a lot of different things, you can enter this other area. And all I'm saying is there is this other area of life, whatever you want to call it, getting high, nirvana, Sartori, the Tao, whatever you want to call it, it feels real to me, and that doesn't mean it's real because I am telling you it's there no matter what, and I don't have doubt. Of course I have doubt about everything, but to just denigrate that, and that's what they end up doing. You can't say spirituality, you can't say God. To me, God was always a word that never identified a thing. It identified a fact that like Yahweh means I am that I am. You can't even say what it is. But they don't want to allow any of that. They think they think like Einstein came up with by the guy who memorized the most facts. You know,
Yeah.
it's just weird to me.
Okay, you're dropping Einstein quotes. I'd like to drop a quote here from another brilliant man. Listen to this quote. Religion is to spirituality what astrology is to astronomy and what curling is to the Olympics. Brilliant. Brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's from the wise crevasses of Greg Fitzsimmons.
I don't like my tweets repeated back out loud. It's not how they're meant
I'm so sorry about that.
That is very good.
Andy, you and I have had a couple chats about this, and I've said this many times on my show. I really think that religion is something that gets in, man-made ways to get to God is something that screws up getting God stuff right. That's how I feel about religion. I hope there's a God. I'm no longer in the certainty camp the way I used to be. I mean, I used to be an evangelical pastor.
Right. I just got
Hello.
Unbelievable. Ooh, check please.
Well, I think the bottom line is I have a God, and I'm not looking for any company. He's my God. There's an unspeakable relationship that's sort of something that I close my eyes and is there, and it's a voice. And
yeah, but isn't there a narcissism? Isn't there a narcissism in that, Greg? Isn't there sort of the, whatever I want, whatever I feel, whatever I think, we're all a product of this culture today, and this narcissistic belief that whatever I feel is right, we then jump into that conversation, the, moral relativity, absolute truth. I mean, is there, because someone's going to sort of say back to you, Greg, well, what if you're wrong, right? I mean, that's the ultimate knee-jerk reaction to, this is my God, this is what I think about God, this is it, and no one can tell me any different. And the pushback is, well, what if you're wrong? Greg?
Well, because I don't think there's a wrong. I believe in moral relativism. I believe that we all live in our own moral universe, and I think that you have a right to come up with your own God, and you come up with some rules with that guy, but then you got to live by them. I mean, it's not a fluid thing. I mean, from a very young age, I've had a sense of what I believe is right and wrong, and that stays pretty much consistent throughout my life. I don't, I've changed stances on things, but that's not the norm. So I believe that, that the idea that there needs to be an overriding set of laws in the spiritual realm that controls what your moral behavior is, that's just following. I mean, anybody can follow a set of rules that were written 2,000 years ago. But I think to have a truly ethical life, I think you have to have some input and decide what for you is the highest level of behavior you can attain, and then to struggle to hold yourself.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding like Ray Comfort or his buddy Kirk Cameron, again, I just have this resounding, echoing pushback in my head that says that sort of smug evangelical response. Unfortunately, that's where I heard it from first. But I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think there's a bit of common sense in this is, well, what about the person X whose truth is X, but their truth is so destructive and disgusting that it can't be truth?
Well, because you're not going to control that guy anyway. There's no Bible or preacher that's going to stop somebody from doing.
No, but what I'm saying is for ourselves determining what our own truth is there not a danger in that?
I think just the opposite. I think that it's really comes down to if you look at the laws of your country versus the laws of your religion. Like if I was a true Catholic, following every tenet of the Bible and what I hear in church, and I believe that abortion is murder, well, then the laws of my country are going against the laws of my religion. And if I believe that my religion is paramount, which it should be, and according to God it is, then I should be at that abortion clinic, and I should be, tackling doctors and using any means possible, breaking the laws of my country to uphold the laws of my religion.
Right.
I mean, what's your order of priorities?
Okay, hold on. Let me just bring people up to speed here in case they've just tuned in. We're on the phone with Andy Kindler, who's funny, and Greg Fitzsimmons, who is funnier. And they're friends with each other, and they've had these sorts of talks before, and we just thought it'd be fun to kind of bring them back on the show. Last time I had Andy on, we sort of went around the horn on this stuff as well, and we reached out to Bill Maher's people to see if we could get him on the show today, and we found out, lo and behold, that Bill Maher is not a nice human being, apparently. We also
I learn that every Friday night at 10.
Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
No, I was just going to say, I hate to break in, but that's what I do. No. The thing is, what Greg's talking about, I believe in a more, not a more profound level than him, but I think he is actually saying something very profound because, Muhammad, I choose to, when I read like Karen Anderson, who we've talked about also, Drew, and the other people, it's like Muhammad was saying the God of your God, the God that I'm seeing is the God that you're seeing, is the God that this religion is seeing. And what that means is that you're filtering whatever that sense is of the other side or the your higher power is filtered through your culture. So to me, the fact that Greg hears this voice and feels it, I think that's absolutely how you should conceive of God, because my mother related to Jesus as a person. Lenny Bruce used to make a joke about how it was hard growing up Jewish because you didn't have a specific person to relate to, so it was hard to get just generally spiritual. So I think the fact that you see God, you're filtering it as a consciousness. It's more than a consciousness, but that's how you sense it. And I think the way it goes too far, it's like that joke, I don't know who the comedian who did it, but it was just like, David Berkowitz killed because he said his dog told him to do it. Well, at that point, you have to say bad dog. I don't know who the comedian is who did that, but it's like, Greg's voices say you should sleep with your neighbor, Greg. That might be the devil coming in.
Yeah, or Pat Robertson. Okay, guys, let me ask you sort of the. There was an old show up here called Tiny Talent Time, and they would sort of have this great question. They would, this deep, heavy question they would ask for 6-year-old kids or whatever, and you get some kids say the darndest things. So here's the big question: what makes for a happy life, and does finding out the truth give you a better life? Greg?
That's a really interesting question. I think about people living lives like there's sort of three, and I hate when people quantify anything, but just in round terms, I think about people living either a successful life, which means going to college, getting a master's, taking your boss out to dinner, going to couples counseling, finding out on Netflix which movies are the best to watch, like having a life that's geared towards success. And then you have like a hedonistic life, which isn't necessarily bad, where people say, here's what I enjoy, and so that's what I do. And then you have people that are trying to find the truth, which is, in general, a miserable way to live life because, you question everything. And I think that's maybe the closest that I do, is I really do. And I think as a comedian, you sort of like, I see that as a role of a comedian. It's like, how can you be as truthful as possible? How can you go on stage and not be ashamed of revealing your most, inner thoughts and things you may be embarrassed about yourself, and stripping away things that might make you feel comfortable in life when you realize that they're not truthful. So, I think it's a hard path to take, but unfortunately, it's kind of the one I'm on.
Okay, this is going to sound like I wasn't listening because I'm about to throw to Andy right away instead of making a comment on what you just said. But I was listening. But Andy, what makes for a happy life, and does finding out the truth give you a better life? Same question.
I think it really is whatever works for you. Because I was at a party and I was talking to the great Canadian and world comedian Dave Foley, and Dave Foley was like saying, "Look, I'm an atheist. I just don't believe there's a God, but I don't care what other people believe, because the thing is like you can be a great artist, you can be a great anything, and you may not need to have a higher power or a something that you connect to. And to me, if you're not worried about it, but if you're walking around saying, like, I don't believe in God, but what other people believe is bad, and all this kind of, but he doesn't care. It's just not something, he's doing what he's doing. It doesn't occur to him. But I feel like, on the other side, when I hear, like, Magic Johnson talk, and people, like Magic Johnson talks about his faith in God and how it got him through having AIDS, I feel like it's almost like he's doing a walking meditation. It's like one of the reasons why Magic Johnson is, like, one of the greatest basketball players in the world. It's not just because he has faith, but because he's able to have this, no mind, single-mindedness of this is where my head's at. And you can come across and go, well, that might not be ultimately the whole thing that the universe is about, but it works for them, and it's not something that's hurting somebody or wrong. In fact, I believe it's tapping into whatever that great unknown no mind is, and however you get into that is great. Or if it's someone like Dave Foley who is that when he's doing comedy, but doesn't have to have that as a model, I think that's great too.
Yeah.
So I am a great human being, is I guess
is the summarizing
Ladies and
statement.
gentlemen, Andy Kindler.
I'm a humanitarian.
Time to
my hate and rage.
almost time to bust out the Morgan David here.
Did you say Morgan David?
Yeah, that's the Upper East Side.
It's Morgan David.
Well, yeah, but if you say it like Canadians, so
I love it. That's the Morgan David.
that's exactly right. Greg, what I'm trying to say here is we only told you that we're going to be here, a certain time on the phone, and I'm mindful of the time. But I'm just stupidly enjoying this. Do you have to bail, or can you handle another few minutes?
My daughter has a volleyball game. I can. What time is it? 11:39. I got about 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Run.
Okay, that's good.
What, did you have to talk? Did you have to say that into a walkie-talkie, Greg?
Yeah, where did you go during that? That was.
I was looking at the time on my phone. You guys are really, really attentive. I mean, I make a cup of coffee and it becomes a whole intermission.
I'm working off of a lav mic, Greg. I have a lav mic, and I doubled my voice, and I'm going through a mixer.
Andy, you're a little gassy today.
Stop it. I could just listen to him. Laugh.
That's so Jewish. You're a little gassy today.
Oh.
All right, guys, there seems to be this, I'm not going to word this right, but there seems to be a fear to be a fundamentalist about anything. Is being a fundamentalist about anything wrong? If you are a fundamentalist about comedy, is it wrong? If you sort of hold to truths and absolute truths and dogma about anything, whether it's something mundane or something spiritual, I mean, is it wrong?
Well, that's an interesting question for Andy because I think Andy is as accepting as he is, and just talking about, the spectrum of beliefs that people can have, like Dave Foley or Magic Johnson. But at the same time, Andy, you have to admit, I think you do hold comedy up to a certain fundamentalism.
That's a good point.
I think that's not bad. It's like, I guess it's depending on how you use the word. You could even use the word as an orthodoxy to how I approach it, or a set of. But it's also, isn't it more just like a code of ethics, or something? I don't know what the word would be.
Yeah, because I just find that in this day and age, the byproduct of being a North American, somebody who's with the times. Especially in Canada, guys, you don't want to be jumping up and down and getting excited about anything but hockey. That's it.
Right.
And if you're sold out for anything, people look at you sideways. And I find that really, really the case in L.A. unless it's Kabbalah.
Yeah, well, hockey though, I mean, that's a problem. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just trying to get the nation of Canada.
Yeah, I'll mess you up, boy.
Well, hockey you shouldn't believe in because it's a hoax. It's like the 9/11 truthers. You really believe it's not fixed?
Right. There's no puck.
There is no puck. Yeah, it's very Matrix
How
of you.
did Toronto lose so poorly? Come on, that wasn't a mistake last year.
You are hijacking this conversation.
But to get back to it, I think that it, like it's what I said earlier. I think that if you accept another set of beliefs as yours, and you even if you don't proselytize it, but if you behave in a way that is, here is the right way to behave, I just don't know that that's a moral life. I feel like then you're exercising your ability to conform, and I just think at the end of your life, I don't know that amounts to anything.
I think that's true. Like, I could never say, like, for example, even me, who's judgmental, I will judge anybody. And
you were on Last Comic Standing.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, I could do a thing like judge what that person's look meant in 1 second.
Yeah.
So I think it's like if you are. But even me, I'm willing to admit there's a prop comic who could be funny. There's a magician who could be. Well, there are great magicians, but I don't ever make it. I think you have to have any bend in any rule or any orthodoxy or any thing that you would call fundamental. I think Greg believes in basketball fundamentals because that's what he teaches the kids when he coaches them.
Right.
I thought that was a joke. Hello, anyone?
Hello. No, it's a bad connection.
Hello, is this thing?
No,
is my comedy off?
I put Goldstein on the bench for having a ham sandwich in the second quarter last week.
By the way, when are we going to have the Jewish Sports Hall of Fame? When is that going to happen?
We already have it. It's one room at the Y. I don't know what that means.
Man, well, obviously we could rattle on a bit quite easily with these two gentlemen. Guys, thank you very, very much. Andy Kindler, second time on the Drew Marshall Show, and the one and only Greg Fitzsimmons, last time on the Drew Marshall Show. Sirius
Hey,
XM.
wait a minute.
Sirius XM Howard 101.
That went past me fast, too.
GregFitzsimmons.com, you know, that's where you go for all things Greg Fitzsimmons. By the way, are you selling anything? Are you coming to Toronto? Do you have keychains? What, like, is there anything we can help you with?
God, I'd love to come to Toronto. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. The Shoe Museum is one of the great museums in the world, and I'm not kidding. It's 3 stories of shoes in a museum.
And that's where you inevitably will find your soul.
Right. There you go.
Anybody?
I do want to promote Netflix. I don't know if you guys have Netflix
Seriously.
for American programming, but I have a 1-hour special on there called Life on Stage.
All right. We will look that up. Andy, anything you want to sell?
Well, I'm doing a one-man show. It's called It's a Really Big Shoe, and it's all about my trip to the Shoe Museum.
Where you found soul.
You could come up with your own.
Second season of Marin, coming up in May.
You could have your own line of Morgan David wine. I could tell you right there.
Morgan Stanley wine.
Morgan Stanley, yeah, with your Catskills comedian shtick. Hey guys, brilliant stuff. Really appreciate it. Obviously, we just touched the surface, and thank you to both of you.
Thank you, Drew. Great job, Greg.
Yeah, great job, Greg. Go away. Go have your
Love
coffee.
you, man. Love
All
you
right.
guys. Be good.
All right, see you. Bye-bye. All right, folks, that is the end of that segment. Very short break. When we come back, it's our Hollywood correspondent, Carrie Pomeroli, comedian, actress, author, fantastic young lady. We're going to play a clip here just before we go out to commercial break and then come back with Carrie Pomeroli. Here is one of my favorite segments, my favorite speeches. This is the 10 Commandments speech that Ricky Gervais gave in the movie called The Invention of Lying, or something like that. Basically, it's Ricky Gervais' atheist movie, you know, sort of poking fun at religion. And so he kind of comes out like, remember Mel Brooks? He came out with, here, I have these 15 commandments, and he drops the one tablet. These 10 commandments. So he comes out with these 2 pizza boxes with the 10 commandments written on the back of 2 Pizza Hut pizza boxes, and the crowd is gathered in front of them. Have a little listen to this and see if you're as cynical as I am.
Number 1, there is a man in the sky who controls everything. Number 2.
Whoa. What does he look like?
Tall, big hands, for making stuff, good head of hair.
What ethnicity is he?
He's a new type of ethnicity. He's a mixture of all our ethnicities.
Does he live in the clouds?
No.
Can we see him?
No. It lives higher than the clouds, too high to see him.
So he lives in space.
Not that high.
So then the thermosphere?
Sorry, people. I've got a lot to get through here. Can we just... Man lives in the sky. You can't see him. He controls everything. Cool? Good. Number 2. When you die, you don't disappear into an eternity of nothingness. Instead, you go to a really great place. Number 3. In that place, everyone will get a mansion.
What kind of mansion?
The best mansion you could think of.
I was thinking of a horrible mansion.
Well, no, it's the best mansion you could ever think of. Not the one you're thinking of right now, but ever. Whatever the best mansion is you'd like, that's the one you're going to get. Number 4, when you die, all the people you love will be there.
Will they have their own mansions?
Yeah, of course. Everyone gets a mansion.
What if I want them to live in my mansion?
Well, that's fine. They'll leave their mansion. They'll come and live with you, won't they?
What happens to their mansion?
I don't know. It goes back on the market. Can we... Number 5. When you die, there will be free ice cream for everyone. All day and all night. Whatever flavours you can think of.
Even bad flavors?
Why would you think of bad flavours?
You just said every flavor I could think of.
Oh, no. I just thought of vanilla and skunks.
Well, don't eat that then.
I just thought the chocolate sauce was diarrhea.
Well, don't put that on the ice cream then. What is the matter with you people? Can we... Please, number 6. If you do bad things, you won't get to go to this great place when you die.
Where will you go?
A terrible place. The worst place imaginable.
What constitutes a bad thing?
Awful crimes, rape, murder, things like that.
Is punching someone bad?
Yes.
What if they're trying to hurt you?
And then it's fine.
Is cursing bad?
No.
What about being late for work?
No, that's fine. I mean, you might lose your job if the boss doesn't like it, but it won't affect what happens to you after you die.
What about if you forget to feed your dog?
Well, then if you forget, I mean, it's bad for the dog. If the dog dies, it's bad, but it's not. I mean, don't do it on purpose. Don't buy a dog just to starve it for a laugh. But can we...
If I do just one bad thing, do I go to that bad place?
No. You get 3 chances. 3 bad things, and you're out.
Like baseball.
That's all right. So, anything else? Yeah. Oh, please, can we just move on?
No!
Hey folks, I want to tell you about the Drew Marshall Show $12.50 special. You ready for this? For $12.50, that's right, only $12.50, we'll mention your organization's name, website, and a brief description. Did you catch that? During each show, we'll read out your organization's name, website, and a brief description for only $12.50. Now, obviously, there's no point in doing that only once during a 4-hour show, so we'll read your advertisement 4 times per show for an entire month, and each time we do it, it'll only cost you $12.50. It's kind of like putting an advertisement up on every church bulletin in the GTA, except you don't have to get permission from that grumpy old lady at the front desk. Now look, because there are limited spots available for our $12.50 special, why don't you call us right now, toll-free on 877-JOY-1250. Sure, we're right in the middle of things here in the show, but if you call us right now, toll-free on 877-JOY-1250, we'll take your name and number and call you back on Monday to sign up for the Drew Marshall Show $12.50 special. This is nuts. Are you sure we want to do this? How am I supposed to make any money?